A hearty welcome to and a good morning to everybody in Brazil, be it in Rio de Janeiro or Sao Paulo or elsewhere, and also attending esteemed guests from the state of Baden-Württemberg. My name is Günther Schmid. I'm Head of Division Foreign Trade in the Ministry of Economic Affairs, responsible for international relations of our companies outside of Europe, and also responsible for the relations to Brazil. Very happy to have tremendous, useful and friendly partners at our economic representative office in Rio de Janeiro with Luana and Andreas. We are happy to have you all here in our online webinar to this BW Goes Brazil and the topic of sustainable finance, finance for good, a very popular theme at the moment. I can tell you that, for example, the state of Baden-Württemberg issued 1 month ago the 4th edition of the Green Bond Baden-Württemberg. The 4th time that the state government issues such a bond just to finance sustainable things like circular economy or energy efficiency topics. So you can see it's of big interest in the state of Baden-Württemberg. We are happy that this Inside series of our economic representative office has gathered such a big interest of the audience and the attendance. I'm very thankful to all the panelists and in this webinar who will give some very useful and important insights to this growing topic of green finance. I hope that you can all gather a lot of insights out of this topic, and I'm really interested to listen to all the experts in this panel. Thank you so much for attending this series, and Luana, I give the mic back to you. Let the Inside series BW Goes Brazil go start. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, dear Günther, for this opening. We are very happy to have you here. And good morning and good afternoon to everyone officially now. Thank you all for joining us today for this important webinar called Finance for Good, Building a Sustainable Future. My name is Luana Lima, and together with my colleague Andreas Olb, we are the national representative of the economy of the state of Baden-Württemberg in Brazil, and I am delighted to welcome you as we explore essential insights into sustainable finance solutions and their role in driving economic progress and environmental stewardship. At the representative office for the Baden-Württemberg economy in Brazil, we facilitate connections and partnerships between Brazilian and VLAN companies, whether for joint projects and business development, R&D and technology exchange in the fields of energy, environmental technology, medtech, innovation and startups, among several others, will help identify potential partners and foster strong relationships. The topic of today's sessions is particularly relevant as nations worldwide recognize the urgent need to transition to sustainable development models. For Brazil and Germany, long-standing partners with shared goals, this transformation offers a remarkable opportunity for collaboration. Baden-Württemberg, known for its leadership in innovation and environmental policy, plays a pivotal role in this partnership. As an inspiring example of sustainable development, the state brings unique expertise to our discussions and is a valuable partner for Brazil in driving forward sustainable financing. Let me now briefly introduce today's program, which we have tailored to provide a comprehensive view of sustainable finance initiatives and opportunities. Our distinguished speakers will lead us through various facets of this topic. We'll start with Christine Majowski, Project Director for Sustainable Finance in Brazil at the GIZ, who will guide us through the current development of Brazil's sustainable finance taxonomy, offering us an in-depth understanding of its impact and potential. Then we'll hear from key figures in finance, Sophia Pohlich from Landesbank Baden-Württemberg, Vivian Pereira from BNDES, and Luciano Schweitzer from the KfW, who will discuss actionable steps and funding opportunities from financial institutions that are driving sustainable finance in the Brazilian market. Today's sessions aims to foster dialogue and inspire action. I encourage everyone to actively participate, ask questions, share insights as we work together towards a greener and more sustainable future. Thank you once again for being here, and I look forward to an inspiring and productive discussions. And with no longer delays, I would like to now give the stage to Christine Majowski for her presentation.
Yes, many thanks, Joanna, and good morning, everyone. Bom dia, and good afternoon also to the participants from Germany. So let me start here my presentation. I hope you have it now in the presentation mode. So yeah, yes. I'm a project director at GIC Brazil. GIC is the German Agency for International Cooperation. We implement projects here on behalf of the German government, but also the EU and other donors, together with our Brazilian partners. So we always have a political partner here in Brazil. In the case of this project that I present here, Finanças Brasileiras Sustentáveis, FIBRAS, it is the Ministry of Finance, and we also collaborate with the Central Bank of Brazil as implementation partner. This project, FIBRAS, has started already in 2018. We're currently in the middle of its second phase, and here we work together with the government, with the Central Bank, on different topics of sustainable finance, promoting it in Brazil's financial system. So I will start with a brief overview of sustainable finance in Brazil, and then go into the topic, one of the hot topics of interest, the taxonomy. So we start from this perspective, this view that there is a strong need for transformation towards ecologically sustainable and socially inclusive economic development. So we have, for example, from the Brazilian side, the Plano de Transformação Ecológica, the Brazilian Ecological Transformation Plan, and the EU side, the Green Deal, which aim for, yes, a sustainable development. This, of course, requires the mobilization and reorientation of capital flows, be it public and private capital flows, national and international. And obviously, the productive and financial sectors have a key role to play in this transformation and channeling capital towards those goals. So what drives the private sector here? I mean, there are many drivers, but just to point out a few, regulation certainly is a big one. We see an increasing amount of sustainability-oriented policies and regulations. Transition risks are an important factor. So this refers, for example, to future policies and regulation, be it carbon pricing, technological innovations that make more cleaner technologies, solutions more viable, and also changes in market demand for sustainable products and services. Then we, of course, also have physical climate risks, not only climate risks, right, but impacts of climate change, also the overexploitation of natural resources, the loss of biodiversity, which have financial impacts for companies, for the financial sector. And of course, there are also business and investment opportunities in different segments of sustainable products and services. We see here on this slide a number of initiatives that have emerged in recent years and decades. So we see, especially since the Paris Agreement in 2015, an increasing number of initiatives, both from the private and public sector. They focus on different topics. Many of them started more with the view towards the management of environmental, climate-related and social risks. We also see many initiatives that promote sustainable financial instruments. We see also definitions classification systems for sustainable activities. Here the keyword of taxonomy, which I will come to later. Here, a brief overview of some of the key sustainable finance policies, notably here for the financial sector in Brazil. Brazil has actually been a leader in sustainable finance from the regulatory side also for many, many years. To point out in 1995, the Protocolo Verde, which was a voluntary initiative led by the Ministry of Environment together with financial institutions from Brazil that introduced voluntary guidelines for environmental policies at financial institutions. Then a big marking point was in 2014 with the introduction of the responsibility policy, the social environmental responsibility policy for financial institutions. Since 2017, environmental and social risk, and since 2021, also climate, explicitly climate risk, also are part of the integrated risk management. So those risks need to be observed by financial institutions alongside with other market risks, operational risks, etc. So the standard risk categories. I don't go into all of them, but just to point out that in 2021, there were several reforms which updated the responsibility policy, also the policy on risk management, and also disclosure guidelines here, incorporating, among others, the recommendations from the Task Force on Climate-related Financial Disclosures, which also plays a big role in EU regulations for the financial sector and also for non-financial corporates. In this slide, I do not, unfortunately, I do not have included regulations from the capital markets regulator, CVM, but there are also several that have been introduced and enhanced, especially since 2021. So, for example, rules on the labeling of sustainable debt products. Also in the last year, CVM announced that they will introduce the reporting guidelines by the ISSB, the International Sustainability Standards Board, to enhance corporate sustainability reporting in Brazil. A last one that I will point out is here in the corner on the right-hand side, which is the launch of the action plan of the sustainable taxonomy. And I will continue with that topic in just a moment. Just here, lastly, before I go into the taxonomy, a few data on the sustainable finance market in Brazil. So we see here on the one hand that sustainable debt is mainly coming from capital markets, with the banking sector, credit market being a relatively smaller share when it comes to volumes, but when it comes to numbers, then debentures and other titles are here. Also, they play a large role. There are also some sector-specific or thematic-specific ones, for example, from the agri sector or real estate. And when we look at use of proceeds, then we see that a big chunk is in the field of renewable energy, but there's also, for example, a lot in bioenergy, in forests, and other multiple corporate uses. So going now into the topic of taxonomy. So what is it and what is it for? Taxonomy in the context of sustainable finance refers to a classification system that defines activities, assets, and or projects that are considered environmentally and or socially sustainable. So taxonomy with that aims to provide a common terminology for companies, financial institutions, investors, regulators, governments, and other stakeholders to guide investment decisions and public policies. It thereby increases the transparency of information on sustainable economic and financial activities, for example, also on the impacts, on the risks, and also opportunities on where to invest. Then it encourages, or it aims to encourage the mobilization and redirection of private and public capital flows towards sustainable investments by providing basically a list or definitions criteria of what can actually be considered sustainable. With that, it also increases the integrity and effectiveness of sustainable finance, reducing, for example, greenwashing or sustainability washing. And it can also contribute to reducing transaction costs between different national and international classification systems or definitions. We see here a global overview of where taxonomies are already in place or under development. So to point out the EU as an example, it was actually not the first one. The first taxonomy came from China, but the EU is the one that is most comprehensive, most ambitious, most granular in its criteria. It was introduced in 2020 with a regulation. And since then, it has been amended by adding criteria for different sectors, for different objectives, environmental objectives, so the EU taxonomy being focused on environmental objectives. Well, with that, the EU has set the standard for countries around the world. So in many of the taxonomies that followed, we see an orientation on the EU taxonomy, especially when it comes to the framework, the basic principles, the general criteria. But of course, when it comes to the specific criteria, then there are differences between the countries because obviously the conditions are very different, be it in economic terms, environmental factors, etc. So for Brazil, which has started the work on developing a national taxonomy in the beginning of 2023, the EU taxonomy is also one of the examples, but also there are several interesting examples from the region. So notably from Colombia, which takes a specific look at the environmental scope, at the agricultural sector and livestock and forest protection, which is, well, a little bit close also to the reality of Brazil. And also the Mexican taxonomy, which has, aside from environmental objectives, also social objectives. So going a little bit more here into detail, and also want to point out that, well, while we as GIZ are supporting the government, specifically the Ministry of Finance in the development, we are technical partners. So I don't intend to speak on behalf of the Brazilian Ministry of Finance. I speak as in my role as from GIZ and as technical partners of the ministry. So here we see the government's framework that was established by decree in March of this year. So we have as the overarching governance body, the Interinstitutional Committee, which is composed of 22 ministries, plus the financial regulators, so the Central Bank of Brazil, CVM, SUSEP, and also the National Development Bank, BNDES. We have here also Viviane, who will speak later. Then there is the, let's say, between on a higher strategic level, but still on the linkage to the operational level, the Comité Supervisor, which is composed of the 8 institutions that you see here, presided by the Ministry of Finance. And then on the technical level, you have the Secretariat, which is composed of the Ministry of Finance and supported by GIZ and UNEP-FI as technical partners to support in the coordination of the working groups. And here you see the working groups. So there are 8 sectorial working groups. I will come back to those later. And for each of the sectoral working groups, there is one or more ministries and other public institutions that are coordinating, plus other participants from the interinstitutional committee. There are also 2 thematic working groups, one that focuses on monitoring, reporting, and verification. So looking, for example, into the policies that the taxonomy may be linked to in future, how reporting will happen, so which indicators, for example, companies that align with the taxonomy need to report in future. And there's also one working group on combating social inequalities. In this first edition of the taxonomy, focused on gender and racial equity. And then last but not least, there is the Comité Consultivo, the consultative committee, which is composed of 18 institutions from the private sector, for example, associations, but also from other civil society organizations that participate in this process and are advising the ministry and the members of the interinstitutional committee. So the strategic objectives are of the taxonomy to mobilize investment towards sustainable activities, for sustainable, inclusive, and regenerative development, to promote technological development aimed at sustainable development, increase productivity and competitiveness of Brazil on a sustainable basis. And also importantly, to create a basis for producing reliable information on sustainable finance flows by encouraging transparency, integrity, and long-term vision for economic and financial activities. I mentioned already, aside from climate and environmental objectives, the taxonomy also addresses social or socioeconomic objectives. And in this first edition, the focus is on climate change mitigation and adaptation, on the conservation, sustainable management, and use of soil and forests. And from the social side, the reduction of socioeconomic inequalities, considering racial and gender aspects, and regional and territorial inequalities. Then I will also, in the interest of time, not go quickly through this, but just to highlight a few of the guiding principles for the development of the taxonomy. There is among them scientific basis. So especially for the climate objectives, the criteria are defined in line with the ambition defined. So this is with Brazil's decarbonization path and the achievement of net zero emissions by 2050. So here, of course, the science provided from the IPCC is being used, and of course also from the Brazilian plans for decarbonization. Another to highlight is proportionality. So the question is on how to make the taxonomy work, not only, let's say, for the big players, for the big companies, but also how to involve smaller and medium-sized companies from different sectors with different conditions. And another important principle is the one of interoperability. So this refers on how the Brazilian taxonomy relates to other taxonomies, for example, the EU one, with the objective to facilitate international trade and investment. Noting again that this does not mean that the taxonomies are identical, but that they have some common, basic principles and framework, criteria, structure that make them comparable. This year is a very important part of the taxonomy development, so the question of how to define the criteria. And so here, for an activity to qualify as sustainable, it must comply with 3 conditions. The first one is to make a substantial positive contribution to one or more of the defined objectives. So here referring to the climate, environmental, and social objectives. At the same time, the activity cannot significantly harm any of the other objectives, and it must also comply with minimum social and environmental safeguards. So those safeguards, they apply on an organizational level, while the first two criteria apply to the specific economic activity in question. And as the colleagues that joined from Europe will see, this is, for example, one of the elements that is in line also with the taxonomy from the EU, as well as with many other taxonomies. Then in Brazil, we have a focus on 8 sectors. That is agriculture, livestock, forest production, fishing, and aquaculture. So CNAE, according to CNAE, this is the Brazilian classification system for economic activities, so corresponding to the NACE codes in the EU. We have also the extractive industries, we have transformative industries, so manufacturing, electricity and gas. There's also a sector on water, sewage, waste management, and decontamination. There's construction, transportation, and different social services like tourism, urban planning, development, and information and communication technologies. And then last but not least, I mentioned the social objectives. So here for this first edition, there is a gender and racial equity index included into the proposal. Finishing now, I think I'm also at the end of my time. So just to give you an overview of the timeline and the steps. So I mentioned the taxonomy action plan that was elaborated last year, also went into public consultation, and then was launched at the COP, the climate conference in December of last year, that laid out the general objective or the strategic objectives, the climate object, the sustainability objectives that shall be addressed, and the general structure. And the governance structure was then formalized by decree in March of this year, which established the structure that I had showed earlier. And then between April and November now was the phase of the development of this first edition, with many meetings, also a week of workshops, so many engagement with all of the parties involved. And now this Saturday on the 16th, this proposal of the first edition of the taxonomy will be launched at the COP in Baku by the Ministry of Finance, and then goes into public consultation that will be open until the end of March. So I use this opportunity also to point this out. It will be possible to participate in the public consultation through the platform Participa Mais Brasil. There will also be several public hearings, general ones, also with sector-specific focus or thematic focus. And the list of those public hearings will be announced on the website of the Ministry of Finance. They will happen both online and also presentially. So who is interested in participating is very much welcome. And then, well, after public consultation, obviously there will be a revision, assessment of the comments, and then the objective is to publish this first version of the taxonomy in July of next year. And with this, I will close here, and yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Christine, for this very insightful and detailed presentation on the taxonomy. We know it's a very dense subject, so it's hard to to summarize in 15 minutes. We have one question so far, so feel free, dear participants, to address your questions in either in the chat or in the PR function. The question is with regards to the main challenges and anticipating now the main challenges in developing and implementing mainly, I guess, the taxonomy. which kind of challenges you foresee as a technical partner in this program, and how are you foreseeing to address them?
Mhm. Yeah, good question, and also a big question. I mean, there are, of course, several challenges. Maybe to point out one is the phase of the letramento. So, right, to get the market familiar with the taxonomy. Well, first of all, with its overall structure, but also then the criteria. And there will be a phase, and this is also what is very important to the government and also to the regulators involved, that this will be a gradual introduction of the taxonomy, also considering certain companies, those that are listed in capital markets. They already have higher requirements regarding sustainability reporting. So obviously they are a little bit better prepared when it comes to internal structures, having teams that work on those topics, but also to, of course, over time get involved other types of organizations. So what will also be part of the introduction and implementation phase, of course, to do pilots with different types of organizations, to work on not testing the taxonomy, also providing feedback of what works well, what does in practice not work so well, and how can it be improved. So this is very important to the ministry, that this is really an instrument that is practical and that will be used by the market. So of course, this requires a lot of involvement of the different stakeholders to participate, for it to be, also to gain this participation, right, of the different parties involved.
Oh, very interesting. So not necessarily top down at once, but step by step with pilots, and also getting the feedback from the market, from all the stakeholders, right? Okay, we got another question, and unfortunately, it's going to have to be the final question, at least for this first panel. Regarding sustainability towards food systems, can you give us an example of the taxonomy and countries that are already executing it for food systems?
So in the EU taxonomy, the agricultural sector was not included in the first edition. There is however Colombia, which has a strong focus on the agricultural sector. However, the Colombian taxonomy is not yet implemented in terms of with the legal structure. So in the EU, for example, you have different requirements on reporting your alignment with the taxonomy. This is in Colombia as of now not the case. So this means there's currently only the voluntary application, but there are I think there has also already been conducted a pilot with institutions, and I will need to check if there's already something available. But this could be, I think would be an interesting resource to look at regarding the use for agricultural system, or let's say food systems in a broader sense.
Okay. Thank you very much, Christine. Thank you very much for this presentation. Stay with us since we're going to have another discussion round. And now we move to our second panel called Driving Sustainable Finance in the Brazilian Market, Actions and Funding Opportunities from Financial Institutions. As mentioned before, we have 3 financial institutions participating with us today. And I would like to welcome Sophia Poli. She is business relationship at the Landesbank Baden-Württemberg, also called LBBW. Sophia, you're mostly welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Let me just share my screen here. No. Yes, no. It's not really working at the moment. Yeah, now it did.
Yes.
Thank you, Luana, for the opportunity to be here today. I am Sofia Polish, and I have been working for LBBW for 8 years now. I've studied international relations, and recently I did a master in environment and sustainability. So that's why I'm involved in the projects in this subject in South America. So let me first start by introducing LBBW. LBBW is a regional German bank based in Baden-Württemberg with very strong ratings and figures, as you can see here. And we are present not only in several locations in Germany, but also throughout the whole world, as you can see here below. And we are present in Brazil with our office in São Paulo for more than 25 years. And we are especially developing export finance for local companies. So here in this slide, we have a great overview of our products coverage in the Global Trade and Export Finance division. But today, let me just move you here. But today I want to focus especially on the Export Finance division. By first starting to explain what exactly is export finance. So it is an instrument to offer long-term financing for companies buying machines from Germany and other European countries. So through this instrument, companies have access to very attractive international rates, and as I said, long-term. So LBBW has received many awards throughout the years, especially as top performing export finance bank. And so to provide this long-term and very attractive international rates, we work with the support of an ECA, that's an export credit agency. In the case of Germany, it's called Euler Hermes, that I believe many are familiar with here in the call. And so we, LBBW, are #1 by Euler Hermes in terms of numbers of transactions. So just keep coming back to the lesson here. So now to dive deeper into the subject of sustainability, I gather a few topics to share with you today. There are many, and we can spend here the whole day talking about it. But I thought first it was important to highlight that LBBW has been issuing green bonds since 2017. And today we have an outstanding of 14 billion euros in green bonds that are flowing mostly into projects for renewable energy and energy efficient building. This makes LBBW one of the largest issuers of green bonds in Europe. And since 2019, we are signatories of the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment, which is a guideline for good practice and promotes the integration of ESG criteria in investment decision-taking and analysis, which is something that banks weren't really used to taking account when granting a loan. So this is something that you really cannot do anymore without taking into account ESG risks. And finally, that's something that I find very interesting at LBBW is that we account not only our own carbon footprint, which as a services company, as a bank itself, is relatively low. But we also include our footprint, in our footprint, the carbon emissions scope 1 and 2 from our borrowers. So this makes us responsible as a whole for the environmental impact of our projects and also seek to stimulate our clients to reduce their own carbon footprint. So now to go deeper into the export finance business, let me move you here so everyone can read. So in the export finance business specifically, we follow the IFC's standards, which are public, everyone can access, and they are state-of-the-art guidelines for sustainable projects, and they provide guidance on how to identify risks and impacts in ESG, and they are designed to help avoid, mitigate, and manage such risks and impacts. So just to, in the end, guarantee that we are doing business in a more sustainable way. So in this sense, the IFC standards classifies projects in categories A, B, C. So A is actually being high impact in the environment, such as, let's say, the building of a new hydropower plant in a sensitive area. B projects are medium to low environmental risks. So broadly speaking, let's say that's industries overall. And C are ESG friendly projects, such as wind farms and solar power plants. So in the export finance business, special conditions apply for C projects, such as longer terms. We have seen projects going up to 22 years of terms, higher cover from the ECA, which automatically leads to lower rates for financing for the banks. And sometimes B projects can also have access to such special rates. If we're talking about a project that's gonna enhance the life of the workers, that's gonna use less energy with the new machineries, or is gonna pollute less, or is going to save more water. These are all things that we are ready to look into when we are doing a project and analyzing it, and we can discuss with the ECAs whether or not it's possible to grant such special conditions for these kinds of projects. So now I wanted to bring some examples, not to leave the whole thing so abstract. First, we financed several new plants for a Brazilian biofuel company over the last 10 years. They started relatively small, and now they own one of the largest ethanol factory in the world, which was financed by us. And they produce biofuel out of corn, and they are highly committed and involved in the national energy transition strategy, especially through this new law, Combustível do Futuro. So to translate fuel of the future. And among other things, this law will allow to add up to 37% of ethanol in regular fuel, not only to mention other measures regarding sustainable aviation fuel and biodiesel. And here, one of the projects that I really wanted to bring up, because it's Rio de Janeiro, we financed the new trains for the Train do Corcovado, or the Christ Redeemer, as you might know it, in Rio de Janeiro. So these new trains, they generate energy as they go down the Corcovado Rio. And therefore, they could save up to 70% of energy consumption. And due to the sustainable character of this project, we could offer 14 years as tenor, plus 2 years of grace period. And lastly, I mention hydropower plants as projects that can be seen as highly impact, as a project. But I wanted to bring this final example that we financed, and that the project itself actually enhanced the region. So this was a financing for the new turbines of an old power plant in São Paulo. So through these new turbines, we could not only generate more energy, because basically this hydropower plant wasn't producing anymore, but also these new turbines were specifically designed not to harm the quality of life of the fish in the region, which was highly important for the population there. Also, there was no influence in the course of the river. First of all, because the geography was already very adaptable to that, but also because any kind of change that might have happened more than 100 years ago. And in this project, there were also social works included, such as the rehabilitation of historic building that was very important for the community in the city, and also the reformation of several schools and public toilets around the city, and also the strengthening of the tourism industry there. That was basically that. So yeah, overall, there is no way to come back. Sustainable finance and including ESG aspects and analysis is something that has come to stay, and we cannot get away from it. So I'm really glad that we're here today discussing this topic. That's it for now. I did a very brief presentation, and I remain here available for questions.
Thank you so much, Sophia, for this very interesting presentation in the operations and projects, or an overview of Landesbank Baden-Württemberg. We'll move to the next panelist, but before, I would like we have many companies from the private sector participating today with us, and maybe initial question to clarify if there is a minimum amount of the project, for example, for financing projects through ACA covered structures, and if it varies depending on the sector, just for them to know and keep this in mind, so to say.
Yes. So overall, we're talking about an initial amount of 5 million euros. That's something that well, it's different for LBBW, because we start with loan amounts that are considered relatively low in the banking industry. So that's why we are really focused also in medium-sized family companies. But we have no ceilings, so we're open to anything that's up 5 million. So if you have a project, an idea of a project, if it involves German suppliers or suppliers from the European Union, just reach out to us, and then we can talk in details.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We got another question, but I'll address this question during our Q&A session, okay?
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Sophia. Stay with us.
You.
And I would like now to welcome Vivian Pereira. She's head of funding department at BNDES. Vivian, please.
Hello, good morning to you all. So I will share my screen here. Just a second. So as Luana mentioned, I'm the head of the funding department at BNDES. I'm in charge of the raising fund activities from international DFIs, as well as for the issuances in the domestic and international markets. I don't know if you see my presentation on presentation mode. Now it is okay? Okay, thank you. So I divided my presentation today into blocks. First, how BNDES is preparing itself to support the transition to a sustainable future, and then how BNDES is financing this transition. I will try not to go too long into the slides, so as we can have more time at the end for questions. So how we are preparing this? Yeah, BNDES is the main, as you know as well, the main instrument to implement the long-term investment policy by the Brazilian government in Brazil. So we act in almost all sectors of the Brazilian economy. We support since small companies to very large companies and projects. So we have a very broad role in supporting these sectors. But here in our strategic planning, considering all the sustainable drive, we have that we've been dedicating special focus on some segments within these sectors. So resilient and sustainable infrastructure, sustainable and affordable energy, of course, sustainable social and regional development, in the productive industry, productive development as well, very linked to the Brazilian industrial policy, public management for citizenship, focusing much more on modernization and digitalization of public services, sustainable agriculture, of course, and the essential public services. Within these sectors, of course, that we have cross-cutting themes. As I mentioned, some of those themes are innovation, digitalization. We are dedicating special funds to support innovation from our source of funding and main source of fund, which is the Workers' Assistance Fund, and I can tell you about it later on. We are supporting, of course, the promotion of capital marketing, playing a role to leverage private capital here through, for example, investment funds, private equity funds, but also by very strategic investments in companies and specific sectors. Of course, that we are also aiming to promote this decent work and income. Exports, BNDES has history in supporting exports. Last year, we relaunched a division dedicated to support exports from Brazilian companies to abroad. SMEs, of course, we operate directly, of course, with the large companies, but also indirectly through accredited commercial institutions where we can channel our funds to SMEs, and this is a very big portion of our indirect lending goes to SMEs, since it's a very important segment in the Brazilian economy for the employment generation. Conservation and restoration of biomes, we have a whole act on this, not only with the Amazon Fund, which is a non-reimbursable fund. We finance it through grants, but also financing through lending. And of course, the just ecological transition and decarbonization, pretty much aligned to the Brazilian government public policies. As Christian has already mentioned, one of these policies are the ecological transformation plan, but of course that BNDES is pretty much active on supporting as well the new industrial policy and the new growth acceleration program, the new PAC. Okay, so BNDES acts supporting through several instruments, so we can make credit, lend to large and small companies, but we are also able to operate through grants for very specific projects. This is more dedicated to forests, as the Amazon Fund and other programs that we have here, and also for social projects. We also have the ability to work through guarantees, where we are granting guarantees, for example, for SMEs through the investment fund to support transactions with SMEs. We are also able to participate in the capital of companies and of funds, investment funds, as I already mentioned. And BNDES is pretty much active in providing service in the structuring of projects, mainly to the public sector, supporting the preparation of concessions and similar projects to the Brazilian, not only federal government, but mainly for the states and municipalities in Brazil. So we are committed to climate, so we are in a continuous alignment to the Paris Agreement, and of course being very active, as Cristiane also mentioned in her presentation, in the discussions on the Brazilian taxonomy. We have key guidelines in this sense, so as we can being even more effective and efficiency in this climate commission. So we are aligning our activities with the Paris Agreement through improving management and best practices. The green economy taxonomy is one of these. We are being part of the discussions of the Brazilian taxonomy, but last year we also went through a process to revise our own taxonomy. We made an extensive portfolio emissions inventory. It's very important to create new commitments on these to know where we stand. And also we are working very intensively in the calculation of avoided and removed emissions from the project supported by BNDES, and we have development a climate risk management to screening our projects as well. We are also making an articulation with several stakeholders. One of these is with the Brazilian government in this and the Brazilian society in the scope of the development of the taxonomy, but we are also very active in fundraising to attract concessional and private resources to finance public interest projects, and also to diversify our main source of funding, and of course being always targeting to reduce our cost of funds to be more effective in supporting the climate project, and I will give you more colors on that later on. So how BNDES is financing this transition? So as I mentioned before, our main sourcing of funding is still the Workers' Assistance Fund, FAT, Fundo de Amparo ao Trabalhador in Brazil. This is our main source of funding, but we are working very intensively here to make a diversification. Of course, that the shareholders' equities is also something that is increasing recently. This is the results. This is based on the results dated as of September 2024, launched this week. We are also working very hard to diversify the source of funds with international entities. And with regard to National Treasury here, of course, we had a process of reducing these funds from the National Treasury in the recent years. The increase that we are seeing now is due to the funds that we channeled to support the recovery of Rio Grande do Sul state after the climate emergency that they experienced this year, the first half of this year. So one of these tools to finance climate through BNDES is the Brazilian Climate Fund, Fundo Clima, which is a fund that was created back in 2009. But this fund has been very recently, but with a very limited source so far. But from last year, this Fundo Clima Climate Fund has been the resources available in the fund, which is a public fund, a budgetary fund from the Brazilian government, has been increased a lot, mainly with the support of the sustainable sovereign bonds issued by the Brazilian government in the end of 2023. So the reimbursable part of this fund is managed by BNDES, and this fund's main areas of operation are resilient and sustainable urban development, green industry, green public transport and mobility, urban mobility, energy transition, native forest and water resource, and green service and innovation. The climate fund brings us the opportunity to support these kind of projects, the climate-related projects, with better conditions. So BNDES's financing is based on market interest rates, which is the long-term interest rate in Brazil, which is basically indexed to the price index plus the 5-year premium of the Brazilian National Treasury bonds. But also, of course, that we can make these financing in other based on other index, other tax, other interest rates, but all of them from market resources. The climate fund brings us the opportunity to blend these funds with more attractive conditions to support climate projects. So the climate fund has in average a cost of 6.15% per year in Brazilian reais. So it's considering the interest rates in Brazil, this is attractive cost to finance projects. This is an average cost for these kind of projects, but for example, for forest and water resources, we have a special condition because this part of the funds is still from the tax collection from the special participation of oil and gas sector. Okay, so for these native forests, we have very special conditions. So the climate fund approvals and disbursements. So as I mentioned, we received from the National Treasury budget, from the budget of the Brazilian government, 10.4 billion reais, which is the amount raised through bond issuances last year by the National Treasury. And so far, we've been able to approve 7.3 billion reais out of this 10.4. And we have already disbursed 500 million, but of course that the disbursements are more, has a different pace of the approval, of course, during the project implementations. Well, as I mentioned, we are also reinforcing our sources of funds from international agencies, from international DFIs. Last year, we were able to sign $3.2 billion in new loan agreements with international multilaterals and development finance institutions. We signed an agreement last year with, for example, IDB, with the New Development Bank, with KfW, which is here represented by Luciano today, so with the China Development Bank and other partners. We still have a pipeline under discussions, under negotiations, which amounts roughly $4.6 billion with international DFIs. This year, we've been able to already sign $1 billion, and we'll still be signing more agreements until the end of the year. And the remaining pipeline is expected to be signed in 2025 and 2026. So just to have an idea, as I mentioned, the main partners that we have, and we have transactions under negotiations with IDB, with the China Development Bank, with the European Investment Bank, with KfW, of course, which is a long-standing partner for BNDES. We signed transactions last year, and then we also have transactions under negotiations with the French Development Agency, with the Instituto de Crédito Oficial from Spain, with the World Bank, the Japanese Agents for Cooperation, and the IFAD to support resilient agriculture in Brazil. Just to have an idea on the sector that we are targeting with these transactions, very briefly away. So we are discussing, so the idea is that these transactions will support our strategic planning, BNDES strategic planning, and will reinforce the resources available for several sectors. So urban resilience, sustainable energy, social and regional development, productive development, decarbonization projects as well, public management, sustainable agriculture, and of course the support of fundings of fund to SMEs. Lastly, we are also reinforce our funds in the domestic market. Here we have a history how BNDES affected the domestic market in the past years. We were very punctual in assessing this market. We were able to retap the market this year with banking notes for the agriculture sector, LCIs, Letras de Crédito do Agronegócio. And recently, we have the approval in the Brazilian Congress of the Letras de Crédito do Desenvolvimento, LCDs, which are banking notes dedicated for development projects that will be assessed by BNDES, but also by other Brazilian development banks. So we have a great expectations with the approvals of the Letras de Crédito do Desenvolvimento, which will give us basis to assess the domestic market in very competitive costs. Of course, that I'm presenting here are the authorized limits. Of course, that the issuances will really depend on the market and the cost that we will be able to assess. But we have a very expectations as these could bring us resources in a very competitive basis to help BNDES to implement its mandate. So this is what I brought you today, and I will be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Vivian, also for this very insightful presentation. I know it's very was very hard to present all partially the portfolio of BNDES with regards to sustainable finance applications, funding, but you did a great job. And with no further delays, I would like now to invite Luciano Schweitzer from KfW for his presentation.
Thank you. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, here and see
Okay.
your presentation. All good.
Perfect. Thank you very much for AHK from Rio de Janeiro and from the government of Baden-Württemberg for building these bridges. I understand that sustainable future is a key issue, and I think that could reapproximate more not only German but also European companies in the challenge that is in the forthcoming. First of all, I would like to share with you some initial reflection. So what KfW Group does in Brazil. So KfW Group has three main institutions. First is the KfW IPEX that works mainly in Brazil with big infrastructure project that involved German and European interest. The second one is KfW DEG that work mainly with internationalization of programs and projects of internationalization of SMEs, small and medium enterprises. And last but not the least, KfW that work together with our partner, the GIZ, with the official cooperation of the German government in Brazil. So GIZ work with the technical operation, and KfW Development Bank work with the financial cooperation. And so it's very grateful to have both here. So Christine from GIZ, that's our partner in several initiatives and with such relevant project that like it's Fibras, and also Viviana, a long-standing partner, not at all as old as the KfW BNDES partnership that this year's has had its anniversary of 59 years. So it's a long-standing partnership, and also nice to meet Sophia in this very interesting challenge to finance the private sector in Brazil. So understood that when finance enters, so generally, so I try to focus my presentation more towards the private sector. So when finance enters, so we can think it as like a business plan. So you first make the marketing plan, then you make the production or operational plan, and then organizational plan, and at the end you make the financial plan where you have to find alternatives and the correct finance to finance your project. So finance, it's not one size fits all. So this is very relevant to understand which organizations do what. So what finance a development bank? So I think that we have a wonderful presentation from Vivian explaining the broad challenge and the broad type of project that BNDES finance in Brazil. So you have to think, I used to say that if you need money for the next month, you should look for commercial banks. But if you need for the next year, an investment bank. But if you have a strategic and very key project that's very with a lot of risks and uncertainties, you should look for a development bank that could understand and have dedicated people to understand your demands. So I bring to a little bit make a little bit deeper this understanding based on a text published by Mazzucato and McFarlane in last year. So they established this concept of mission-oriented development bank, and in this paper they present this concept and compare, not compare, but present the cases of BNDES and KfW. So it's, I understood that could be very helpful once we have both institutions this panel. So the main roles of the development banks is contracyclical. So this is the key. So when the economy is everything okay, it should take a little bit the path, slow down the path of financing. And of course, when you are in the valley, it should support more the private sector, so you minimize the effect of the economic cycle. So this doesn't mean that this is always the rule, but that this is the main concept that it's generally brought to the table when you talk about development banks. Second, it's a capital development institution. So in economics, you have the identity savings equal to investment. So this is the key institution, development banks, that are essentially making this economic equation come to real. So you help to develop the economy, the capital basis, so you can improve the economy. That's not the true for every financial sector or financial instrument, but for the development bank, it's essentially what we do. Third, you have a venture capital role, so you should help to deal with projects that are in the beginning of technology, that are rising in the horizon, so it can bring this investments to reality. And sorry, it's venture capitalists. And last, mission oriented. So it should be oriented by a mission in the economy to promote a transition. So what this bank are focusing. So what's very clear with the presentation of BNDES, the Fundo Clima, and the robustness of this fund to support the energy transition in Brazil. So this is a mission-oriented task from a development bank. And some key characteristics. So it's a challenge-led mandate. So the tough topics generally are dealt by this bank. So when renewable energy, wind power plants were being introduced in Brazil, generally people go to the private banks, and the private banks say, hey, did you pass in the BNDES to check the robustness of your project? And no, so please pass there before and then come to us. So this type of support to hold the biggest challenge, the project that are beginning, this is a key role of institutions. Progressive conditionality. So I give you more risky money, but of course you have to give me something in return. In the case of KfW, gas emissions. So sorry, forget the word. Gas effect. Sorry, the gases that make climate change. It's escape me the
greenhouse
word
gas emissions.
Greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you. So I remember in Portuguese and Spanish, and forget it in English. Thank you very much. Diverse capacities and expertise. So to allow this adequate support to new projects and new sectors and segments in the industry. Robust governance, so to support all the challenges that are going to be faced by these banks, and of course, a stable source of resources. So when you have economy trouble, you have the guarantees that you could provide and give the support to finance the economy to get to the next side of the economic cycle. In the case of KfW, we have also mission focus, and in the general cooperation, we work with mega trends. So the first one is climate change and the environment. So it's the key challenge that KfW work not only nationally but internationally. The globalization technological progress, of course, all these changes to face climate change mitigation adaptations involves a global partnership to tackle these challenges, and of course new technology solution to promote it, and the demographic change that it's always in place in these challenging times that we are living. And in Brazil specifically, we have also three main topics. So first, tropical forest. Second, just transition and urban development and adaptation. That includes also electromobility. And the last and third area that supports and development of financial sector and technical training to face all the changes that the just transition and this environment that Brazil is passing by could be improved, and the opportunities get it. So some examples on how it's important to establish specific finance instruments to specific missions or challenge that should be that economies or countries or regions should be facing. So first, Fundo Amazônia, that is a long-standing partnership between the Ministry of Environment and BNDES. And the forest-related mission is, for Fundo Amazônia, is command and control. So we have to reduce deforestation. And so the Fundo Amazônia is a key instrument to support this topic of deforestation, but also other related topics of growing new forests, and reforestation is also relevant. And the new project that is as an advancement that we signed a partnership last year with BNDES is the Fundo Living Forest, Floresta Viva, that is targeting reforestation and value of the existing forest. So it's a much broader mission that also involves matching funds with the private sector to broaden the available funding and make the challenging not only through government and NGOs, but also participating with the private sector in this challenge. And the second example I brought is the PTX platform, Power2X platform, and its development fund. That's a mission related to the energy transition, and the main target is ramp up of green hydrogen projects. So in the case of Brazil, it's international platform. It's not only for Brazil. Its first project call was dedicated to 7 countries. One of them was Brazil. And the idea is, for example, GIZ with the H2 Brazil program make a very relevant contribution to Brazil to start the discussion, involve the first technology centers, finance the first pilot projects, help to prepare the projects for the financing sector. So you establish this first contact with the green hydrogen opportunities. Then KfW came with a second challenge to ramp up this the green hydrogen in Brazil, and of course in the other 6 countries, to help to cover the financing gap of industrial scale green hydrogen projects. So it's an international call. We had the first one at the end of last year, and we expect to have the next one on December or the first quarter of the next year. So we call projects that are ready and support with grants to cover the gaps, the financing gap, so allow the financial closure of these projects, so they can go to the financial sector and get the finance or get its feasibility in financial terms. So this is the main goal of this instrument. So it's very important that the private sector also understand that you should look also for the adequate type of finance. And of course, not every institution provide the specific finance that are required in this. So our role is to help in this more pioneer area and more innovative projects. And of course, in the Brazilian environment, as you saw in BNDES, we have also an additionality. So we don't compete with the existing institution. We complement them, and also we support them with finance where needed. Well, talking about a little bit about the future, Brazil is transitioning from an era or age of billions to the age of trillions. So whatever you look around in the challenge and opportunities in Brazil, you see that for the next 10 years, hundreds of billions is not more the number that we are thinking on, but the challenges are much bigger, and the investment and financial requirements are much bigger. So I will call your attention for this first topic, the green hydrogen ecosystem. That's not only the green hydrogen, it's an entire value chain that comes from green energy projects, green energy transmission lines, electrolyzers, and all the logistics and industrial sector that is required to transform the hydrogen in sub-products, or byproducts. So this is a huge, and as we can see, it's not very difficult to find projects in Brazil that are talking about tenth of billions of euros in terms of investments in the next 5 to 10 years. So I think this is the first one that it's the main opportunity. The second is the electromobility ecosystem. First, we have the change of the vehicles, so cars and buses and trucks. This is the first level. The second level would be the adaptation of this infrastructure to charge this equipment. The third level will be the energy power lines and grids to support this new charge that are being plugged in the grid. And the last one, of course, the mechanical people are going to have to move for electric and electronic vehicle people. So this will be a big transition, and more other business that we cannot envision at this moment. And the last one, once you have green and cheaper energy, mainly locally. So if you think in the grid is one thing, but the opportunity that you can make subgrids or generate power for dedicated uses, it's enormous. So you have opportunities in terms of power shoring. So intensive industry could move to Brazil to produce greener and cheaper. Nearshoring, of course, you can feel in Europe the tension between the big blocks and the options to have move your factories more nearer to your interests. So this mainly for the US, but could be also thought in terms of European interest. And of course, new industrialization. So there are a lot of new sector that is coming in the next years. So you have also the opportunity to start these new industries with partnerships and technical exchange with local partners in the next years. So that's my part. I am available for whatever you need, information, additional doubts. And thank you very much for the invitation and for the bridge that you built. Thank you.
We thank you, Luciano, to give us also this overview on the role of KfW, the main trains in Brazil, and well, very interesting. Oh, he is hopefully now back. But since we are a little bit advanced with the time, I would suggest we have a question from Stefan Kepler in the chat function, how we can apply to KfW grants. I hope you got the contact details of Luciano. If not, we can forward you later as well so that you can get in touch. And I would like to maybe to close this very insightful and exciting webinar. We addressing a question to all of our panelists with regards to, in your opinion, and you of course you don't need to give now a very long presentation with regards to this, but just some final thoughts or food for thoughts, which are, in your opinion, the role of the financial institutions with regards to a low carbon economy, a transition to a low carbon economy, and how to avoid in this context also the greenwashing in financial products, so to say. I don't know who would like to start. Sometimes it's easier to start than to be the last one, but if not, maybe Christine can start giving an overview of her opinion, and then we move to the financial institutions.
Yes, please. Could you repeat?
Yes, sure. In your opinion, which are the roles, so to say, of a financial institution towards a low carbon economy, and how to avoid greenwashing?
Well, many,
In a
I
huge
mean, they have,
sense.
yes, exactly. It's a big question. No, but I mean, they have, of course, obviously the fundamental role as they are the ones that provide finance to the productive sectors across all sectors to households. So they have a huge role to play in incentivizing investments in more sustainable activities, but also in observing the risks that we will face in the future and that will grow in terms of climate risks, in terms of either environmental risks, of social risks. And so here, in collaboration with the private sector, also with governments, they have this big role to play in facilitating, but also accelerating the transformation towards sustainable economies.
Okay, so facilitation and acceleration. Sophia?
I would say from a banking perspective, training, because I think that people that work in a daily basis need to be trained and informed about, I mean, deep about the subject, not just, broadly, but really deep, dive into complex projects, because ESG is not black and white, as there's also like people like to say a lot of shades of green. So I think that discussing these cases is really important. And so, I mean, at LBBW, for instance, we have many questionnaires that decision makers and also analysts need to fulfill before analyzing a project overall. But I think that we need to go a little bit further, because sometimes like the questions can be really simplistic, and I think that somehow discussions are missing within the institutions, but also between other institutions. That's why here it's really important. For instance, one question that I guess also turned out that I think it's a great point of discussion that, I mean, I can't even start going into that right now. But how do we work with Brazilian taxonomy as an European bank that follows the taxonomy from Europe, you know? This is something that, I mean, all these kind of discussions, I think, that need to be held in a deeper level, in my
Thank
view.
you, Sophia. Thank you so much. Vivian, would you like to add something to the discussion?
Yeah, sure. No, yeah, all the thing on green it started by a statement, right? And step by step, we are going the direction to have more and more ways to verify that. And this is a trajectory. I don't think that we are in the state of the art of all these taxonomies and so on. But I believe that this green washing, as you mentioned, Luana, will be even more. We will have ways to verify it, and it's a tendency, I believe. But from the development bank perspective, I believe that the biggest challenge is how to, have the proper resources to finance, to promote the development of the projects that will really change, will really represent a dramatically change in the way we do things today. So Luciano brought many sectors that are quite new, green hydrogen, and other sectors that needs a massive investments, and we need to have the proper means to support this project, because at this stage they are still very expensive to be put in place. So I believe that the biggest challenge is that how to have the instruments to really support and to go to into a new level on the sustainable project financing. I believe that this is from my side.
Thank you, Vivian. And last but not least, Luciano, and then I see Günther also has raised his hand after Luciano, if you don't mind.
Yes, I will start with the greenwashing. I think it's each day more difficult to do that. So, for example, in Brazil, you have the taxonomy. The central bank is entering in this type of control and follow up of the type of finance. So understand that will be each day more difficult once the market develops. So I understand. From the finance point of view, I understand that the private sector should also organize. So AHK is a good example on how you can organize private sector demand priorities so you can better address with financial solutions. It's a venture capital issue. It's highly intensive capital finance. It's equity. So it's very important to have this credible alignment, at least the first project. So once I remember for the wind power project. So once you get the first project, the people understand the risk and how to analyze, and the technology risk was put aside. So you start with a flood of investment and the entrance of the capital market. This came to. So understand that it's a coordination game. So the private sector organize itself, make the first pilot and the reference projects, so you can copy and paste and improve, and then you can find out the adequate package of finance. So it's very difficult to, as I mentioned in my presentation, to have a one-size-fits-all finance. So not only the type of finance, but also the type of institution that should be supporting the project and facing the risks. So I think that, and also these are huge changes. I understand that space for everyone. The point is finding your segment, your niche, or whatever else. So I think that is very relevant to the private sector also. Get in the game and organize. And I think that the German has this advantage to know very well how to organize project and finance and coordination. So I think that this could be an advantage for German companies and firms.
Well, thank you for your very insightful considerations. Now, please, Günther, feel free to.
Luana, thank you. And first of all, a big thank you to all of the panelists for your impulses. Very, very insightful for me and our division too. Coming back to what Sophia said for a couple of minutes, I think that is a really important topic that out of our experience being at Brazil 2 years ago, and we had a little small banking symposium and a lot of question marks in the eyes of my delegation, how to deal with those different types of taxonomies and bring that information to it's for me, the Baden-Württemberg companies, because on the other hand, when we are doing in Germany green bond discussions and looking for the ecological impacts of those projects in Germany and Europe, yes, we are at the end of possibilities in some fields, but on the other hand, in Brazil, there are huge possibility of projects who could give a real climate impact. So I'm an economist. I want to spend my money in the most efficient way, not doing climate projects in Germany. Please do that in Brazil and South America. And so one of these prerequisites could be further working on that, yes, adoption and common understanding. Yes, we have different types of taxonomies, but we are, yes, working all on the same climate change and ecological impacts we want to have. So thank you very much, Sophia, to put the finger on this point. That seems to me very important for further working together, Luana, with you and all the other guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Günther. And with that final closing and perfect closing, I have no more words to add, just to thank our dear panelists today. I think it was a very insightful webinar and, well, very good discussions that we could program for an entire week. But in attention, of course, to your time, I'd like to thank very much Günther also on behalf of the Ministry of Economy, Labor and Tourism of Baden-Württemberg, and of course, all our attendees. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day or evening almost in Germany. And stay tuned in our Baden-Württemberg and the land LinkedIn webpage. We have a link also provided to you to follow us in the chat function. And you can address me your questions. And we know we have some questions here, but due to the time, it won't be possible to address them now. We can maybe forward them to our panelists afterwards. Thank you so much and have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.